Akhenaten, the enigmatic, heretic king of Egypt's 18th dynasty, 1353 to 1351 before Common Era, reshaped the very fabric of ancient Egyptian culture. During his 17-year reign, he introduced radical changes to religion, art, and society, challenging traditions that had endured for centuries. Akhenaten's bold monotheistic shift to worship the Aten and his revolutionary artistic expressions made him a polarizing figure in his time and a fascinating subject for historians today. His daring vision disrupted the status quo, leaving a legacy that continues to intrigue and spark debate across the ages. The rise of a revolutionary pharaoh, Akhenaten, born Amenhotep IV, ascended the throne of Egypt around 1353 before Common Era. He began his reign as a traditional pharaoh, much like his predecessors, continuing the religious practices that honored the vast pantheon of Egyptian gods. However, it wasn't long before he embarked on a path that would irrevocably alter the trajectory of Egypt's history. By the 5th year of his reign, Amenhotep IV made a bold decision. He changed his name to Akhenaten, which translates to effective for Aten. This change symbolized his new direction and signaled to the world that he was no longer the pharaoh of Ammon, the state god, but rather the servant of Aten, the sun disk. This shift wasn't just symbolic, it was the beginning of a dramatic religious overhaul that would reverberate through Egyptian society. The Aten, previously a lesser god, became the central focus of Akhenaten's new religious ideology. It is important to note that Akhenaten's religious reform was not just a shift in focus to a different god, but also an attempt to remove the dominance of Ammon, Egypt's supreme deity at the time. Akhenaten's desire to center worship on the Aten was so profound that it led him to take radical steps, including the destruction of monuments and temples dedicated to Ammon, and the persecution of those who continued to worship the old gods. This has led some historians to speculate whether Akhenaten's religion was monotheistic or simply a form of henotheism, worship of one god while accepting the existence of others, a debate that continues to this day. The art of Akhenaten, breaking with tradition. While Akhenaten's religious reforms were groundbreaking, they were not confined to the realm of theology alone. One of the most striking aspects of his reign was the evolution of Egyptian art, which shifted dramatically from the traditional rigid style that had dominated for centuries to a new, more fluid and expressive form. Before Akhenaten, Egyptian art adhered to strict conventions. The pharaohs were depicted in highly stylized and idealized forms, with broad shoulders, narrow waists, and perfect features. However, under Akhenaten, art became far more exaggerated and naturalistic, often featuring long, narrow faces, elongated necks, and androgynous figures. Akhenaten himself is frequently depicted with a slightly feminine, almost otherworldly appearance. His elongated skull, narrow waist, and prominent hips have led some to speculate about his health or even his personal preferences. This shift in artistic conventions was not limited to Akhenaten alone. His family, including Queen Nefertiti, also adopted this new exaggerated style. The art produced during the Amarna Period, which includes some of the most famous depictions of Akhenaten and his family, is a striking departure from previous Egyptian art. The new artistic style reflected the king's religious philosophy, which emphasized the interconnectedness of the royal family and the Aten. In these depictions, Akhenaten and his family are shown basking in the rays of the Aten, which appear as life-giving rays extending from the sun disk to the royal family, symbolizing the divine relationship between the king and the god. But Akhenaten's artistic revolution was not just about aesthetics, it was a direct reflection of his religious beliefs. He sought to break from the old formulaic depictions of the gods and pharaohs, introducing a more personal and intimate approach to divine interaction. Akhenaten's Great Leap, the founding of Akhenaten. Akhenaten's reforms weren't limited to religion and art. In a move that shocked the ancient world, he decided to move Egypt's capital from Thebes, the traditional heart of Egyptian power, to a newly established city called Akhenaten, which is present-day Tel El Amarna. The name Akhenaten means the place where the Aten becomes effective, which reflects Akhenaten's belief that this was the location where the Aten had revealed itself to him. The construction of this new city was no small feat. It was strategically placed between the cliffs that symbolized the horizon, creating a sense of divine selection. Akhenaten claimed that the Aten itself had chosen this site to be the new center of worship, reinforcing his authority and religious revolution. The city was designed to reflect the king's vision of the divine, with open spaces, wide streets, and grand temples dedicated to the Aten. What made Akhenaten even more remarkable was its rapid construction. Unlike the monumental stone structures of previous royal building projects, Akhenaten's new city was constructed using smaller building blocks called talatat. These smaller blocks allowed less skilled workers to participate in the construction process, thus speeding up the completion of the city. Within just 3 years, the majority of the city's administrative buildings, temples, and royal palaces were completed, making Akhenaten one of the most ambitious urban projects in ancient Egypt. However, despite the initial enthusiasm and grand designs, Akhenaten's new capital would not endure for long. After his death, the capital was abandoned, and the focus of power shifted back to Thebes and other traditional centers of worship. The mystery of Akhenaten's death and legacy. The end of Akhenaten's reign is shrouded in mystery. His sudden disappearance from the historical record has raised numerous questions about his death and its aftermath. Akhenaten most likely died during his 17th regnal year, but the exact cause of his death remains unknown, as his remains have never been conclusively identified. Some scholars speculate that he may have died from a disease, while others believe he was the victim of a conspiracy or even an assassination. What is even more intriguing is the fate of his tomb. Akhenaten was buried in a tomb at Amarna, but it was never completed, and his body was never found. Some have suggested that a skeleton discovered in Tomb Kings Valley 55 in the Valley of the Kings could be that of Akhenaten, as the tomb contained several items associated with him and other figures from the Amarna period. However, this theory remains controversial. Following Akhenaten's death, his reforms were rapidly undone by his successor, who most likely was his son, the famous Tutankhamun. The boy king returned Egypt to the traditional religious practices centered around the worship of Ammon. Akhenaten's new city, Akhenaten, was abandoned, and many of the monuments celebrating the Aten were defaced or destroyed. However, despite this erasure, Akhenaten's legacy has endured in the historical and archaeological record. The enduring mystery of Akhenaten. To this day, Akhenaten remains one of the most mysterious figures in the history of ancient Egypt. His religious revolution, his artistic innovations, and his dramatic reshaping of Egypt's political and religious landscape continue to fascinate scholars and the public alike. Was he a visionary, a heretic, or perhaps a man driven by an unshakable belief in the Aten? While we may never fully understand Akhenaten's motivations, his impact on the course of Egyptian history is undeniable. In the centuries since his death, Akhenaten's name has come to symbolize radical change and defiance against the status quo. His reign, though brief, left an indelible mark on Egyptian culture, and his story continues to be a subject of fascination, debate, and exploration. Whether seen as a reformer or a heretic, Akhenaten's legacy as one of Egypt's most daring and unconventional pharaohs remains secure. Akhenaten's enduring influence. Akhenaten's time in power was short-lived, but the radical changes he introduced have made his reign one of the most studied and debated in Egyptian history. His reign was marked by bold moves in religion, art, and politics that challenged the very foundations of Egyptian society. Though his successor reversed many of his reforms, Akhenaten's legacy endures. His innovative artistic style, his religious revolution, and his ambitious city-building project at Akhenaten all remain monuments to a pharaoh who sought to change the world. Even after thousands of years, Akhenaten remains a figure of intrigue and inspiration, one whose revolutionary ideas continue to resonate in the study of ancient Egypt. And there you have it, the fascinating, mysterious reign of Akhenaten, the pharaoh who dared to change the course of Egyptian history. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Egypt's most controversial rulers, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.